Done.
Excellent, and welcome to the TADSummit Innovators. We have Matthew Smith from FieldCloud. He is back because he is going to be presenting at TADSummit in October. Matthew, how are you?
Hey, Alan, I'm doing great. And Giovanni, always a pleasure. Hey, Giovanni, great to see you again as well, man. What a pleasure to be on the TADSummit Innovators podcast again. And, I cannot believe that TADSummit is only a few months away. And looking forward to coming in and bringing a bit of an industry 4.0 angle to the conversation. You guys are doing some great stuff on programmable communications and all of the telecommunication kind of centric things, but now bringing in manufacturing and everything that, again, is also connected, I think is really important. So, yeah, cool.
Exactly, because the last podcast we did, I think you gave some really nice use cases around like VCon and the importance of VCon for Industry 4.0. So that for me was beautiful insight.
I think if there's a killer application that we can all help give birth to, and I think this is why getting the message across into the TADSummit community, the other innovators out there, and other companies that are working definitely in different verticals. You think about Strolid focusing on auto dealers and used cars, right? And, we've got other players. If you think about what Carl's doing with Voxist, this is definitely more of a underlying platform enabler that enables other verticals to actually deliver value. So by coming together, we can, I think, give birth to something which I think has profound interest and relevance for manufacturing and other industries that are process oriented. And so, I think we just want to kind of divide up industry and manufacturing into two buckets, right? We've got the kind of product discrete manufacturing where we're going to be creating, individual, articles. And then you have continuous process industry where we're producing bulk product. The difference between an oil refinery or a chemical plant and a company that is making, for example, cardboard boxes or, filling cardboard boxes with cereal,
Exactly. So what are you going to be presenting at TADSummit in October?
Right. So the title of the talk is Slash the Industry 4.0 Gordian Knot. Okay. And a Gordian Knot is this it's part of Greek mythology. And it's all about this incredibly dense and virtually impossible to untie knot. It's a knot that is considered to be so tightly, tied up that we just accept that it exists. And for me, a lot of the issues today in the technology and infrastructure space in manufacturing resemble a Gordian knot. We've ended up tying ourselves in knots over decades of either, vested interests with, equipment vendors and technology vendors, just general habit and ways of working. And it seems like it's almost an impossible equation to solve. So how about we just do, the solution to dealing with the Gordian knot was to slash it, was to take a sword and literally cut it, and that's how you untie the knot.
That's it.
So for me, this is a call to action on how we can be more radical.
Excellent. Excellent. So you've got, as I had asked, 4 or 5 bullets on what you're going to cover. So maybe you give just a little bit more insight around some of the topics you're going to be covering, but also what I'm keen for is the TADS community as listening to what you're going to present to provide feedback to you so you can make it as relevant as possible to their needs. Okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, we're going to kind of start off with exploring what I also refer to as a Byzantine maze. Now, this is another very evocative mental picture
Yeah.
of this very, difficult to navigate
Hmm.
puzzle.
Yeah.
And why is it like a Byzantine maze? It's because we're dealing with a lot of complexity. It isn't
Yeah.
just that we've tied ourselves up in a knot. It's just that the different moving parts and getting our way through this is like trying a rat in a maze.
Yes.
Now, this is because there are a wide number of different legacy technologies that are still
Yes.
in use.
Yeah.
And just like we have in the telecom industry, you've got some predominant and highly standardized
Yes.
and almost sacred cow. They're standardized to such an extent.
Yeah.
Think about SS7
Yeah.
as a technology standard.
Yeah.
And if we look at field buses and SCADA protocols,
Yeah.
even programming styles for programming logic controllers for automation process control,
Yeah.
we have some industry standards which have entrenched a certain philosophy and a certain way of working.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something that we do need to navigate, just in the same way that telecom practitioners today and innovators are navigating, what is part of the furniture.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's grandma's precious couch over there. And there's that old rotten little footstool table thing that could quite easily have an axe taken to it and thrown on the fire to be used as firewood. It's those kind of things that we need to be looking at. What is still relevant? What has stood this test of time? And what is ripe for, again, disruption, because either we ignore it, we throw it out, or we simply, pretend it was never a thing.
That's it. It's that abstraction layer that enables you to focus on the pieces that matter in trying to transform some of these legacy industry processes.
Yes. And there's two things I might want to add. One is, so again, it's understanding that there is a layer cake with anything. So when we talk about abstractions, obviously we've got our physical, actual wires that, plug in. All the way up to actual, human interaction with a system. Okay, so it's about, again, getting back to good cybernetic principles. Sorry, Giovanni, I'm using a big word. Cybernetics is a forgotten discipline today, but we need to get back to cybernetics and understand systems thinking again and have a good rethink, because we become victims to black box thinking. So that's one. The other one, which I just want to add, is the so beyond the abstractions, we also have this notion of doing things out of sequence. So there's a step-by-step process that's required to get you from point A to point B. Digital transformation with anything is a journey. All right. You've obviously got to have a direction of travel. You need to know where you want to go. Might turn out that you might end up somewhere a little bit different. Okay. But you do have a rough idea of where you want to go. But just in the same way that you can't take a road trip out of sequence unless you want to waste time and resources and backtrack, etc. Okay. All right. There's definitely some steps that are required. And some of these steps will require keeping some legacy running. They will require having proxies and wrappers around legacy technologies. And again, by putting the right abstractions in the right place at the right time, you'll be able to make progress. So I think
Gotcha.
that's the point of this complexity navigation exercise.
Understood. Understood. So what, from your perspective, are some of the current hot topic transformations?
Right. So the big one everyone's talking about in manufacturing and Industry 4.0 is something called a unified namespace, or UNS.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this really highly regarded uber thought leader, figurehead of the movement, a gentleman called Walker Reynolds.
Yes.
He runs a company called 4.0 Solutions and is being involved in systems integration, SCADA, automation, process control for a couple of decades, for decades already.
Yeah.
Okay. And this guy is a great thought leader, and he's galvanized an entire movement around UNS, Unified Namespace. Now, Unified Namespace fundamentally is about a report by exception, event-driven architecture.
Gotcha.
Okay. So this is the key difference between a lot of SCADA and process automation systems today, or legacy ones, is legacy ones are not event-driven.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, they are definitely not report by exception.
Yeah.
You have to actually solicit data.
Yep.
You have to poll. You have to basically say, hey, have you got anything for me? Or what do you have for me?
Exactly. Right? Yeah. What's X? What's X? What's X?
Exactly. And if the return is, 0 and 0, you basically are, again, going on this loop, and you're collecting the same data.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, back in the old days, and I mean, I'm old enough to remember this, right? You felt comforted because it told you that something was alive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, the thing's up because it actually responded.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funky on Zoom. I do a thumbs up and it does an automatic thumbs up on my screen.
That's right. Yes.
That is crazy. Anyway, so yes, so it's telling you something's alive. And then the other bit is that when you are recording data, in other words, you are creating a sequence of, and again, this is to use a confusing term, we talk about a sequence of events, except those aren't actual events. They're simply measurements. They're data points, okay? Yeah. But you're creating a historical record. And a lot of old school automation systems would get very freaked out if we had gaps in the data.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. And this breaks that whole sort of rule of distributed systems, is that you therefore place an unnecessary burden on availability and uptime and reliability of the network, right?
Yes.
Your communication channel needs to be perfect, 100%, you know, in order to guarantee that what you are requesting, but the thing you're requesting actually is meaningless when it doesn't change. It's only meaningful when there's a change of state.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think unified namespace is very good in terms of a set of principles and an approach.
Okay.
It's just there's a lot of, because it's become sexy. Sorry, I was about to talk about that girl on.
No, don't go there. Don't go there.
Say that, but it's UNS definitely is finding its like celebrity status because a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon. Okay, so that means that the amount of BS that is being trumpeted about is rising.
Yeah.
So my real point, this comes back to the second part of my talk, or the second, section in my talk, which goes very well with the Gordian knot and what we need to cut. Let's cut out the BS.
Yeah.
What I love about TADSummit and the TADSummit Innovators and Truth in Telecoms is that it is zero BS. We have zero tolerance for BS in the industry, and we need to come back to a zero BS position with all this Industry 4.0.
Gotcha. Because this is interesting, because with UNS, I report by exception, event-driven architecture, and then and this really resonates with the conversation we had with John Musa from Ford, you've got all this data coming in, which is event-driven from customers, because they've had an interaction, it's frustrated them, or they got feedback. So you've got all these sources of data coming in from multiple platforms, but all linked to could be a common process, or could be, I mean, let's take Tesla, because, they're always in the news, but they use customer feedback directly. That feedback goes into the manufacturing process. So, and there, of course, from our conversation last time, is a great example of the importance of VCOM in enabling that event-driven data to be fed in, and then can be used by different parts of the manufacturing process to deliver a better experience to customers. So part of what I'm trying to do is sort of connecting the dots here between challenges within 4.0 in coming through the BS, but also in finding use cases and examples where UNS can include all that customer conversation.
Very much so. And I think this is where we can find great complementarity.
Yeah.
And also bring in another fresh perspective into the manufacturing realm. So what I found, especially after posting daily on LinkedIn for the last 3 months and getting some great feedback and engaging with folks who come from a hardcore automation technology or a hardcore, manufacturing operations background, is that manufacturing operations and specialists in this field tend to be quite blinkered. And I say this with the utmost respect and kindness, is that you guys are very focused on your domain, on your expertise, on your craft. It's true that being able to automate a manufacturing process, a production line, requires some competencies which are very different to what you find in general purpose IT and telecom.
Yes.
So that's great. And so I'm saying this with the utmost respect. However, we don't quite, because of that, we miss some of the big picture opportunities. Some of the original premise that the Germans had with Industry 4.0 almost 15 years ago, where they were talking about, again, having faster feedback loops, where the product itself, the actual output of manufacturing, is part of manufacturing feedback, and interaction with product, how the product is used, also feeds back into improving manufacturing process. And even with unified namespace today, we still haven't really got our heads around that.
Gotcha.
Because UNS, if we look at how it's being deployed by manufacturers today as part of a step-by-step digital transformation journey, it's still very much an internal thing. Right?
Exactly.
So you may have a connection between your business systems, so the enterprise resource planning. So typically a manufacturer is going to be concerned with making sure that the raw materials are coming in, that I have the right amount of inventory in order to make up my product. I've got a link between, my customer purchase orders and then my manufacturing orders that are dispatched into the factory to make a batch of X number of units with this color or this particular formula. But that's all internal orchestration. And you put your finger on something very important, Alan, which is there's customer conversation. So this is as a user of a product. How am I engaged in a conversation with my supplier? All right. about how I'm using the product and
Yep.
how my experience can improve, manufacturing the next batch. And there's all of that. So if you think about the process that Strollid enables with auto dealerships, that's
Yes.
very much, that's based, hey, I want to buy a used car. I want to have a conversation with a used car salesman at a dealer. And then there's this whole thing that gets basically digitized.
Yeah.
That's one. The other one, though, is an internal operational communication layer that between machine operators on the shop floor, between maintenance function, between obviously quality and safety people.
Yeah.
It's all of that operational communication.
Exactly. Because that's interesting, because you could then, because the product is live and adaptable in the field. So you're receiving customer feedback that will be potentially impacting how soon you release an update, what gets prioritized in that update. And of course, the challenge you've got is you've got multiple instances of the hardware. So how deep it can go and what you need to do to enable resolution of particular customer issues. And then that could then have a prioritization. And, it could be the braking system as a simple example. People keep complaining about when I'm turning and I put the brakes on, then the steering slows down or something. And now that could be, well, we can do this software fix. That'll partially solve it. But actually, to really solve it, we need to change the servo here and here and give it, some technical issue that impacts the physical production line. So there's interesting that complexity, that's an internal decision in terms of once it starts to impact the product, but you've still got a group that are doing all those software updates for all the existing products that are out there across all their instances. So it's quite a complex, and again, safety, economics, because if you're going to make a change to the platform to meet, it could be like the number one customer issue. That has a big impact because you're creating another instance of the product that you're going to have to run on, that software is going to need to run on. So it's a complexity, but I feel it's where manufacturing is, that the products now are in, the customer space, are being used in the customer space, need to be adapted within the customer space with the latest updates. But then there's a sort of long tail of, this is how we're fixing it today. But if we want to be more cost effective, we need to do that update on the actual product itself. Again, all being driven by that event-driven architecture, grabbing customer feedback when it's happening.
Yes, definitely. And here's two things that I think are a little bit kind of wild. One is on the operational communication side of things. So this is just kind of stepping away quickly from, customer interaction with the product. We tend to think that it is an internal process. But if you look at manufacturing today, there's a lot that has been outsourced. And there's also a lot that is to do with the way and then the value chain is set up and the relationships between, for example, equipment vendors or capital goods. If you think about the actual machines that are in your factory, all right, and how those are serviced, how those are maintained. So it is no longer a purely internal monolithic activity internally. And that's where I've seen a lot of strain over the last, and I've seen this for a while. I mean, I've seen this for going on almost 20 years now, where as more and more outsourcing has been practiced, and more third parties are involved in providing maintenance or industrial services, or again, providing even inputs into manufacturing. So we've got this really cool acronym, VMI, vendor managed inventory.
Oh, okay.
So VMI is an interesting approach because basically that is moving to a consumption model where, you know, so supplier A, let's say, who supplies bulk, for example, polyurethane precursors.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go into an adhesives plant. They're going to arrive with a big tank,
Yeah,
and a dispensing system with with basically with metering on it.
yeah.
And they're going to say, don't worry, that's our inventory. You don't have to buy a 20-ton delivery of PU.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. We'll bring it and you consume it, and then we'll replenish it. And it's a way of kind of readjusting your business model to
interesting.
provide this as a service.
But we're starting to overrun, because again, we're getting into very interesting conversation around within the Industry 4.0 space, some of the hot topics, UNS, and then how that can link to, you know, all this real-time event-driven feedback and the different layers of the cake that can be applied to. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize this. I'm going to publish it and just ask, you know, TADS community, what interests you around these topics? What do you want to know more about? Because, for example, you know, we've mentioned Strolid. You know, after the session we did for them, Industry 4.0 was one of the verticals. They wanted to look in, understand more, and say, how can we take what we've got and be impactful for manufacturing? So again, it's just an example of looking from our different perspectives on some of the problems that can be solved using the technologies that are at hand. So cool. I'm looking forward to this. It is, you know, it's complex. It's got a lot of overlaps, but I think we're at a point now where the Industry 4.0 sort of technology stack is now relevant and compatible with the programmable comms stack. So I think we've got some interesting integrations between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Alan, I mean, where the telecoms community, right? So those who are involved in programmable comms, right? I think where this is going to be greatly complementary with folks who come from manufacturing and process automation is that one thing in telecoms that is a key, let's say it's a key part of the system and the architecture is the notion of conversations.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We tend to not really ever categorize things as conversations in manufacturing.
Yeah.
It's all about data. We talk about events. Okay. You know, if I think about it, it's like events in manufacturing, conversations in telecom, and transactions in business IT.
Yeah, yeah. Because you have here are the conversations that we're having with the owners of a 3.6 liter engine. Here are the conversations that we're having with the 2.4 liter engine, and they could be very different conversations and have very different impacts on those production lines.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Cool.
Thank you, Alan.
Johnny, anything you need to add?
Always a pleasure. And Matthew, you're the man. And looking forward to it. One thing I want to just add real quickly is, you know, the connectivity, the IoT, the 5G.
Yeah.
We're talking about all these different things, but really connectivity is just not there. I think that's a conversation we had on our first podcast. So I'd like to dive into that next time we talk, because without, you know, secure connectivity, you got no data going anywhere.
Oh yeah.
So can I hear you now? Can I hear you now? Can I download this now? Not there. So that's a further conversation, Matt. And
Giovanni, you're absolutely right. I know earlier on we mentioned about the layers and the, you know, the different sort of levels of abstraction. You know, I think a lot of this is about applications. So you talk about actually making a, you know, a conversation that's something that runs on a network, but you need that basic connectivity for this damn thing to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And
there's too many dead spots. Service quality of service is not there yet, and all that is needed in order to really get to where you want to get.
And that was a great point that John Musa, John, because John Musa made a great point that with some of the feedback, it's done on a store and forward basis. So it's stored, recorded in the car. And then when the car is connected reliably, it's then forwarded to Ford Pro. And that then goes into their data pipeline.
So here's a weak point with unified namespace. Okay. And I'm going to, again, this is in the interest of having a zero BS conversation. A weak point with UNS, okay, is that UNS is meant to represent an instantaneous live snapshot of the entire state of the business. That's it. That's kind of the one thing. It's not about storing, forwarding, etc. Although those functions can be within the infrastructure, but there's an assumption. Okay, and again, one has to, I think, be forewarned about this, is that you will never actually have 100% accurate live current state view. All right, for exactly the reasons that Giovanni and yourself have raised, is that the network cannot be guaranteed to be 100% up. All right. No single element within the system can be guaranteed to be always on 24/7, 365. Okay. Now we can engineer a system so that it will actually give you the appearance that everything's working fine because it is fault tolerant.
Exactly.
That's the telecoms people have been doing very well for a very long time, is engineering fault tolerant systems. Okay.
Cool. So let's draw a line because we could carry on talking for a long time now. So Matthew, again, thank you so much. Johnny, thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to your session again. To all the TADS community, please provide feedback to Matthew on his session so that we can steer it to your needs. I've got a feeling it'll be more on some of the basics, but let's see where the feedback takes us. Again, thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alan.